passionate to beat somebody. We're passionate to beat everybody.
My expectation is we go out and dominate and create a nightmare and make people never want to play you again.
If you are a fan of another team and your coach is not out there doing everything that Kirby Smart is doing right now, you are already losing. You feel however you want to feel about that.
Nowhere to run and nowhere to hide for 4 quarters. They got to see us in our house for 4 quarters. They got to look us in the eye for 4. This is about us and our family and our house. This is about us. This is our mentality. We ain't backing down. We ain't running. Set a tone, send a message. This is our house. Physical toughness wins in football now. And if you in this room, you got it. If you come in here, you better believe in it. Because this physical toughness, it's what makes the difference. Elite focus. That's all I do to the guy across from me. I'm fixing to whip his ass. Not in my box, not today. It's about us. It's about our family. We attack. You take that helmet and you strike them. And you strike them and you strike them. That's how you get respect.
Physically, I will break them.
Are you ready to uncover the secret behind one of college football's most dominant programs? Sit back, because we're going to take a closer look at Kirby Smart and what he's done to transform the Georgia football program through culture, a fierce competition, and player-led accountability. We're going to take a look at the dynamics that drive these athletes to excel, pushing each other to new heights and creating a legacy and a relentless pursuit of excellence. We're going to talk about that and much more on this edition of the How About That Dogs Cast. Everybody settle in, because tonight, the one thing, it's one word, but it's also a lot that goes into it. The answer to the secret is one simple word: culture. Now, when it comes to the University of Georgia, you've heard a lot of people say a lot of things when it comes to culture. You've heard them talk about how Georgia's on the wrong path, how they're too focused off of things that are happening off of the field to be winning championships on the field. You've heard people take shots, especially from opposing fan bases. Why not? That's the easy, low-hanging fruit. But tonight, we're really going to look at culture. We're going to take a look at that culture that everybody wants to talk about and really get into exactly why Georgia is where they are, why they have become what they have become. We're going to break it all down step by step. To begin with, you have to start with recruiting. Did you know that over the last 6 recruiting cycles, Georgia has finished number 1, 5, 3, 2, 1, and 2 in the national recruiting rankings? Now, it doesn't take a scientist to understand that that's pretty good. And it also doesn't take a scientist to know that when you have that many good players, all of them can't stay. But the ones who do stay end up being rewarded. And we're going to walk through all the ways that happens. It's not just that they choose to come to the University of Georgia. It's that while they're here, they're not just spending 3 years or 4 years or 5 years, maybe 6 in the case of a COVID extension. It's that they're actually winning while they're at Georgia. They're actually going on after Georgia to do great things in the game of football, which is the sport that they have chosen to, center their life around as young men. They're making those years count. The thing about culture is that it doesn't just happen. It has to be built out over time. The misconception is that culture is something that is built by the coaches. But the truth is that culture is the players. Culture is the players. They're the ones that have to live it every day. They're the ones that have to choose to buy in, to be a part of the program that's being put in place. Culture is the players, but it's up to the coaches to show them the way. That's what Kirby Smart has excelled at during his time in Athens. Beyond just the players taking ownership of that culture, competition is key. When you have players that are buying in, holding each other accountable, and then there is a standard put in place of fierce competition in everything that they do, Well, those two things put together get you well down the road to having a culture that's going to produce championships. The other piece of this puzzle would have to be that you cannot be a great team. You can't be part of a great team unless you're a great teammate. When you talk about culture, people want to talk about, well, it's a family environment. It's a brotherhood. That would be the softer side of that word. The players want to play for each other. So when you look at Georgia's culture, the three components of it have to be the fact that it is about the players. They have to hold each other accountable. They have to be the ones that they answer to, not the coaches. You also have to have that competition in everything from the summer runs to the weightlifting sessions to every day at practice to every rep during that practice day. It has to be all the time. You can't turn it on or turn it off. It has to be something that you live, that you breathe. And the only way that you do that is when the players are completely bought in. And when you're bought in like that, and you see that the guy across from you is working just as hard, not only for his success, but to make you better so that the team can have success, well, then you start to care a little bit more about why he's doing what he's doing. And in turn, you want to work for him. That's how you develop that family feel, that brotherhood. And why do we talk about family feel and brotherhood when we're talking about a sport as violent as the game of football? It's because that's what the players talk about all the time. And it doesn't start after they've been on campus for a while. It doesn't start, when they've been there 2 or 3 years. No, it starts in recruiting. It starts from the very first time they step foot on campus as a 16, 17, 18-year-old young man trying to decide where he's going to play his collegiate football. And then from that point forward, they see that everybody there on campus already feels that way. And then they start to think, well, how would I fit into that? And why do these guys care about me or what I'm doing? And you pair that with the coaches then setting the tone and leading the way and reinforcing all of these things every day. And you get this mixture that comes together in a culture that produces wins and championships and records. That's how it happens. It's not one thing. It's a collection of things. And like I said, it starts with recruiting. And Georgia has been dominant on the recruiting trail. But it's not just about the level of player that they choose to recruit. It's about the type of player that they choose to recruit. You've heard Nolan Smith say it. You've heard multiple Georgia Bulldogs say it once they move on and go to the NFL. And they reflect back on their time in Athens. Georgia is not a place for everybody. You're going to be challenged every day in every way, on the field and off. It's going to be hard. You're going to have to do all those extra things above and beyond what your cohort who chose to go to another school might be having to do. It's different in Athens by design. It's not just that you are a 5-star and now you step on campus and you're a 5-star. No, it's that you have to earn it once you're there. It's that you have to do it again and again and again. And that's how it becomes muscle memory. That's how it becomes normal. That's how it becomes routine. That's how it becomes the standard. Is that you forget that there's another way to do it because that's the only way that you and everybody else around you is doing it. Those things come together and it strengthens those bonds that we were talking about earlier. Once you're on campus, once you've been a 5-star recruit, once you've made the decision to come, now it really does settle on the shoulders of the players to make it or break it. You are going to be whatever you work towards being, right? You are going to be whatever it is when somebody's not looking. When it comes to goals, that's why I like to talk about goals and standards. And when we're talking about Georgia football, we're talking about a standard here. So if you're a Georgia football player, you don't walk into Georgia with a bunch of goals and think that you're going to achieve them. That's not how it works, because that's not how human nature works. As humans, we're all the same in that we will never be as good as our goals, but we will always fall to the level of our standards. So when you show up on campus as a young man, a true freshman at the University of Georgia, you can put your goals aside because you're never going to attain them if that's all that you're focused on. You have to make a personal decision, a personal choice. What is the standard I'm going to set for myself? What is the example of the players around me? What are they doing? What are the coaches asking of me? That becomes the standard. The standard, by definition, is what you feel that you deserve. I love myself enough to say, I deserve this type of relationship in my life. Therefore, you're not going to settle for anything less than that level of relationship. Whether we're talking about interpersonal respect or anything else, how hard you practice every day, it comes down to your personal standard, meaning it has to be at least this good or it's not good enough. And all of us have to set those standards for ourselves. So if you're a young man stepping on the campus at the University of Georgia, you can't chase your goals and think you're going to get there, because you won't. You will always fail. It's human nature to take the easier road. But if you set standards for yourself, then you know this much is required of me and I will do no less than this. I will accept nothing less than this standard. But again, you might not know how to do that as a young man. And that's where the coaches and the veteran players showing you the way help you along. What does that look like? Everybody knows this video from the championship game against Alabama. Channing Tindall famously busts a coverage assignment on a play down near the goal line. Nakobe Dean has his back, makes the play, breaks up the pass. Alabama doesn't score. And then Nakobe calls him out on the field in the moment to his face in front of God and everybody to see. But then the very next play, Channing says, that's right. That wasn't up to the standard. This is. And then he goes and makes a big play and gets the sack to set Alabama back. A key moment in the game that could have gone either way. But it was because of that individual player-led leadership, that standard that they hold each other to, that made the difference in that moment. And there are 100 of those moments every day at practice, in every game, in every weightlifting session, in every running session, in every skull session. It has to be the players that hold themselves accountable, because it is the players who ultimately are the culture. They're the ones that have to buy in and make it happen. And once you see it like that, once you've seen the guys before you do it, it becomes easier for you to do it. That's how you have a player like CJ Allen, who in his sophomore season really stepped into that role as a leader on the field for Georgia. You can tell when he's standing in a huddle and players like Jalen Walker are standing right beside him, or Smile Munden is standing right beside him, and they're keeping their mouths shut so CJ Allen can speak up and lead the group. You can tell that he's earned the right to have his voice heard. And you can tell that the other players are listening. That is what it has to be. So it's that culture in Athens. And we're looking at it in 3 parts. That's what makes the difference. That's why Kirby Smart and his teams have been so successful. So what does it look like when a coach sets the standard? Well, the cool thing about Kirby is he doesn't hide it. He doesn't pull his punches. He puts it right out there for everybody to see so it can get into the echo chamber, so it can gain speed, it can gain momentum, and the players begin to hear it everywhere they look. They see it. A couple of years ago at SEC Media Days in Nashville, Kirby Smart delivered this beautiful one-liner. He says, "Better never rests." And that's all you heard all season. To this day, you hear it still echoed around the Georgia program and amongst Bulldog Nation. Better never rests. When you have a man that is as driven as Kirby Smart is, and you see his attention to detail, you see how hard he works out on the recruiting trail, then you know that he's living his mantra of better never rest. So if you're a player and you see that, then you're like, oh, wait, that's what it looks like. That's what it looks like when he says better never rests. There's always some way to improve. So again, it's not about just having great players. It's about having the right kind of players. So when Georgia's rolling out there and racking up these top recruiting classes after top recruiting classes, they're going after a certain kind of player. They have to have the kind of player that they believe is going to buy in. Now, are you going to bat 1,000 on this? No. You are always, there's a push and pull between getting the best players and then getting the perfect fit. Hopefully you have enough crossover between those two things that you get the right group of players who want to stay and win championships together. But it doesn't always go that way, and you're going to lose a few in today's college football through the transfer portal, and that's fine because they're going to go out and recruit more really good players who they believe are going to fit that culture. And more often than not, Kirby Smart and his staff have gotten it right, stacking 5-star and blue chip players one on top of the other while maintaining a culture that is rock solid to anyone who should be taken seriously in the game of college football. When they look at it, they know that the culture in Athens is fine, that is better than fine, that it's among the very best in college football. And as I pointed out earlier, the results back it up. If you just look at the recruiting classes that have come in under Kirby Smart, they have won championships on top of championships, just like he had promised they would. So Kirby has a plan. He knows what's happening. He knows what he needs to do, what it has to be if Georgia's going to go win at the level we all want them to. But then once they get on campus, they're not done because of that player-led accountability, the fact that there are wonderful athletes who are there with the right mindset, working in the right way, working while they wait. They get the players on campus and then they develop them. They play them. If you're good enough, you're old enough. How many times have you heard that saying? Example, year after year, you see freshman All-American. This year, it was KJ Bolden who earned that title. Year after year, you see these freshmen come in ready to participate, ready to contribute to the University of Georgia. And speaking of development, there's none better than just what just happened this past season with Jalen Walker. When he showed up on campus, he was a blue chip prospect, can't miss kind of guy. Everybody thought he could be great, but not everybody knew exactly how he was going to do it because he was so talented at everything. He could play in the middle. He could play on the edge. He could cover the passer. He could get after the passer in the pass rush. So how do you put all that together and get the best out of him? Working with his coaches, putting in the work while he was waiting to get on the field more consistently. Jalen Walker and the coaching staff figured it out, and it led to him becoming Georgia's second Butkus Award, or third Butkus Award winner, the most recent Butkus Award winner for the University of Georgia. That is what development is. But it's not just inside the building. They take it on the road. And even in a year that most Georgia Bulldog fans are going to look at and say, that was not the best year. That was not the best team. That was not the most fun I've ever had watching college football. They still went out and won a conference championship in the toughest football conference in college football. It's impressive any way you cut it. You don't just do that because you got good players. When you have a schedule and a season as challenging as Georgia had in 24, you don't just roll your helmet out there and win another championship. It comes back to the bond that the players have. It comes back to the accountability that they have for one another. It comes back to the overall culture and family feel that they have that makes them want to play for each other when it gets hard and push through and still achieve great things. And that's exactly what they did. And everybody wanted to see it. It's not like Georgia isn't the most popular team in college football. They are. They are America's team, at least when you look at who wants to watch them play. Now, admittedly, I'm sure there are a certain number out there who simply hate watching the games, and that's fine. They're still watching. Your haters are still fans if they're watching. And that's what the reality is for Georgia these days. And the numbers back it up. But it's not just this year. We are looking at almost a decade of sustained success at the University of Georgia. And you don't just do that. It doesn't just happen. It is because of that culture, the same culture that led players to come back year after year to buy in to what the coaching staff is pitching, and then come back and do it all again in pursuit of championships. It started with Nick and Sony and Lorenzo Carter. And every year down the line, when you look at it, you can find examples of players that could go make millions in the NFL who turn it down and come back to Athens because they want to be a part of something greater, because they want to play with their brothers. That's the kind of thing that is special about Athens right now. Stetson Bennett came back. He didn't have to, but he did. Led Georgia to a 15-0 record in 2022 after winning his first national championship in 2021. He came back and did it again. And the Dogs went back to back. It's hard to do it better than that. I mean, after you roll out there in 2021 and you think, well, the curse is broken, we've done something that we haven't been able to do in 4 decades, I'm going to go out on top. Stetson said, nope, I enjoy this too much. I have more to prove. I think we can be even better. He comes back and they do it again. That speaks to the place. It speaks to the culture and the environment of what's going on there. And when you have a system like that in place, it leads to things like this. Now, again, this is a tricky thing to pull together. You can have a really good culture, and it still doesn't mean that you're going to win every time you play. But it does mean that you have built a place where players want to be, and they understand why they want to be there. They want to do it because it's hard. They want to do it because they want the challenge of it. They want to do it for each other. Not only for themselves, but for the person beside them. And that makes it very, very special. The thing about Kirby Smart is that he gets it. And nothing inside the building is more important than the culture itself that they're trying to manifest. Whether it's skull sessions, whether it's the way they run their practices every day, there's always a meaning behind everything that they do. Kirby was caught on a hot mic. Well, it wasn't a hot mic. He was mic'd up at one of Georgia's practices in the lead up, I think it was, to the Peach Bowl against Ohio State a couple of years back. And he was like, everything I do it for a reason. First, we do it here, and then we go here, and then we go here. There's a purpose. That's what Kirby said. And when you have players who buy into that, they get it. They understand that that's what's required to pull the best out of them. That's how you get these guys showing up year after year in draft classes for the NFL, setting records for the number of players being drafted over X number of years in a certain window of time. No school has put more players in the NFL than Georgia has via the draft over the last few years. It's just a fact. I mean, Georgia, as you can see here, after the 23 draft, has had more players taken in the past 2 drafts than any other college program in history. Across the board, offense, defense, they're turning out players everywhere. Why? Because of that development that happens while they're in Athens. They're not just beating up on a bunch of college kids and winning championships, but then they're taking their game to the next level and getting it done in the NFL. They've been dominant on the defensive side of the football. You can see here, first rounder at every defensive position over the last few years, over the last 3 drafts. That's incredible. And then when you look at what happened in 2024, Georgia just kept the ball rolling, had 8 more drafted, 2 more in the first round. And it's not like they get drafted and you never hear from them again. These guys are in the playoffs all over the league. This year in 2024, you can see it. Players, AFC, NFC, in the playoffs, leading their teams to newer heights. But it gets even better because they're not just on a team as a special teams guy or whatever. You've got players coming out that are NFL All-Pro level performers coming out of this University of Georgia football program. These things don't just happen. It is not an accident. It is because, yes, they're great players, but because of the culture and the way they are developed at the University of Georgia, these players are then ready to pursue their dreams in the NFL when they have the opportunity. And we can go on and on and on because, again, not only are they just in the playoffs, but they're in the Super Bowl. The Kansas City Chiefs, Philadelphia Eagles, littered with Georgia Bulldogs. For the 24th consecutive year, the University of Georgia has at least one player on a Super Bowl roster. That's staggering. That level of consistency is unheard of. And the University of Georgia is the epitome of consistency, culture, connection. They are the standard. I've mentioned it a couple of times. They are the standard because Kirby Smart leads the way. He shows the path forward. He holds them to task every day in everything they do, especially when they're on the field for practices. They're not just out there enjoying the sun or the cool weather in the fall. They're getting after it with a level of competition that is not seen across the rest of college football. Those are not my words. Those are the words of NFL draft specialists who travel all across the country. They go and look at all of these schools that all have great players, and they might have a great player that they're looking at from Team A, but the way Team A goes about their business is not the way the University of Georgia goes about their business. In today's world of social media, you see that there are various players who appear on podcasts and make themselves available for interviews in ways that they never have before. And it's not when they're talking to a professional or being interviewed by someone from a certain station or anything like that, but when they're talking to each other in a podcast format, they'll be like, I talked to my buddy who went to this school and I asked him, man, do y'all do it this way? And he just laughed at me. Like, no, bro, we don't do it like that. Nothing like that. That's because the way Georgia does it is different, but it's different by design. It's different on purpose. Every day when they show up to practice, Kirby has a plan to make them better. Here, then here, then here. And that process is repeated over and over and over. Each day at practice is a microcosm of each season, because during the season, you start the season here, and then you hopefully are going to progress to here, and then here and here, and playing your best football at the end of the year. And that is just a microcosm of the entire year, the 365 days that make up what Georgia has to work with to get ready for each ensuing college football season. There's a plan in place. And the way the University of Georgia is doing it under Kirby Smart right now is just different than the way everybody else is doing it everywhere else. And the results are showing us all that it's a pretty good way of going about things. Now, if you're getting value from this, if you will, go ahead and hit that like button for me. I only want to be worthy. And the only way I'll know I'm doing a good job is if you let me know. So I hope you'll do that. When we're talking about culture, yes, we're talking about the players. The players are the culture. They embody it. They live it every day. They have to be it. Competition is part of that culture. Every day at practice, they're getting after it. That shows up. We mentioned the NFL draft. It's about to happen again. And when the University of Georgia players go out there and show up in Indianapolis to run at the combine or perform or interview, or this week at the Senior Bowl, the way the University of Georgia players represent themselves in the university is just different. You can see it. Because not only did they just walk out of Athens and forget how to compete, they're taking that with them when they go to Mobile, Alabama for the Senior Bowl. They're competing right now in Athens or in Mobile at the Senior Bowl the way they competed in Athens, because that's what they know. That is their personal standard. They are trying to make themselves a bigger and better future by the way they perform right now down at the Senior Bowl. And when they go to Indianapolis for the NFL Combine, it's going to be the same thing. They're going to compete there just as hard as they competed in Athens for the last 3, 4, 5 years. That's what sets them apart. That's what makes them different. That's why they are so successful when they're in Athens. And that's why, as we just went through, they are so successful when they leave Athens. Because they've learned and grown and come to adopt fully the culture of what it takes to be great. Because the truth is, it doesn't matter what you want to do. If you want to be great, you don't have choices. There is no choice in being great. It requires what it requires. It takes what it takes. So your personal standard has to rise to the level that you are doing enough to be as good as you want to be. And during their time in Athens, these young men come to know that fact and own it. And that is the difference. Now, there's more to college football than just a head coach or the players or the results on the field. I'm talking about the fans. When you have a program like the University of Georgia, it's easy to be a fan. It's easy when everything's going well and the team's winning, dominating, and pulling in trophies, racking up recruiting rankings, seeing players drafted in the NFL. It's easy. But even having said that, I think it's appropriate to acknowledge that the fans at the University of Georgia, the fans who go to Sanford every Saturday in the fall, the fans who watch the games at home and support the program in a myriad of ways that we can't get into now, they are as much a part of the championship culture that has been developed at the University of Georgia as anything else. And it is because of the support of Dog Nation that the University of Georgia and what they are doing right now is not going to end anytime soon, and that the football program, as Kirby likes to say, is not going anywhere. And as I said at the beginning, it comes down to one word: culture. When Nick Chubb and Jordan Davis, Roquan Smith, Sony Michel, when these players chose to come back to Athens, they set a new standard for what it meant to commit to the G and be a Georgia Bulldog. That standard left a legacy that the players of today saw and strive to live up to as they make their own way in the new world of college football and each successive new breed of Georgia Bulldog. Kirby Smart has it rolling in Athens, and there's no way of looking at it and thinking that that's going to stop anytime soon. The culture in Athens is rock solid. Regardless of what some fans from other fan bases might want to say, throwing stones, the reality is, among people whose voices we should listen to, NFL scouts, opposing college football coaches from across the country who may never play the Dogs, they still know that what Georgia and Kirby Smart are doing right now is special and it's different. And it is directly responsible for why Georgia is having as much success as they are having under Kirby Smart. Kirby's not going to change. If anything, he's going to work that much harder. And as Georgia Bulldog fans, that should make us feel really, really good about the direction of where this football program is headed for the foreseeable future. I'm headed to let you know that I appreciate you being here, and I want to encourage you to support the channel. Thumbs up if you like what we're doing. If we're bringing you value, if we're entertaining you, please drop us a thumbs up. We appreciate it. And don't forget to double check and make sure that you're subscribed, because when we get to 10,000, we're going to do something cool. I can't tell you right now what it is because I don't know. We're going to figure it out together, but we're going to get there soon. And it's only because of you and your support of this channel that could be possible. So thank you very much. Don't forget, there's an audio podcast. You can take us with you anytime, anywhere, and listen to the latest edition of the How About That Dogs Cast, because, well, you know, that's where all the good stuff happens, is on the pod. And of course, there is the Ring the Bell newsletter. You want to be the first to know about what we're doing, what's coming down the track. As a Georgia Bulldogs fan, sign up for the newsletter. That's how you're going to find out. And of course, I have to say thank you to all of our channel members for everything you do, the additional support you provide. It means more to me than I can ever explain. And I have to say it to you every week. I appreciate it. Kirby Smart and the Georgia Bulldogs have it rolling. I don't think that's going to change anytime soon. And if you're like me, a Georgia Bulldogs fan, I can't wait till the season gets here. I can't wait till draft day gets here. I can't wait till spring practice gets here, because I get to see what this culture looks like on display yet again. That lets me feel good about the direction of the program, and it only amps me up because I know that we're going to get to see the real thing sooner rather than later. Until next time, y'all take care of yourselves, your friends, your families. Take care of each other, and go Dogs! Hey, y'all, thanks for sticking in here with me again for another week on the podcast live stream. I appreciate it. It's good to see everybody in here. I appreciate everybody having a good conversation over here in the chat. It looks like we got our friendly faces that we are used to seeing. Jeremy, Timothy, 225, Carol. It's good to see all y'all in here. It's awesome. I see Chris in here from Facebook. Cool. Watching over on Facebook, the live stream over there. That's cool. I like to hang out and make sure I don't miss anybody if at all possible. I'm going to scroll back up here. I know Jay Shipes was in here earlier. It's always good to see Jay jump in here with us. There he is. So yeah, I appreciate you guys hanging out with me for a little while tonight. A little while here in the off season. I like to touch on whatever's on my mind this week, you know, whatever we got going on. But I don't like to keep you guys too long, and I like to give us enough time to do a little overtime here in case anybody's got anything on their minds they want to talk about. But for me, as I started thinking about where we were in the off season, the thing I kept coming back to was the way Georgia has spent the last couple of off seasons, and the way that it, time after time, some situations much worse than others, it just seemed like Georgia was having a rough off season. Like things weren't going well for whatever reason. Now, here we are, almost through January, and there's a long way to go between now and the regular season. But one of the things that we're paying attention to is exactly how is Georgia going to navigate this offseason? How is it going to be different than the last two? Because I'm just going to be real with you. There have been an opportunity for me, as I've looked over the last couple of off seasons, where I have felt less than really good about what was happening in the offseason. Not necessarily about what is happening on the field or with recruiting or any of that, but just in terms of it just felt like something was off. Like not that they weren't focused, but like they weren't as focused as they could be, or maybe it was just circumstantial, but it just felt like something was off during the offseason. And I mentioned this a couple of weeks ago on the podcast. If I get anything out of this offseason, it's going to be the quieter it is in Athens, the better. Can we get through the offseason with only good news and good reports coming out? The odds are long that's going to happen, because the odds are long that's going to happen anywhere across the country. But one instance of something occurring is far, far different than the sort of off seasons that we've had the last couple of years. So that's one of the main things I'm going to be looking for here in the off season. But the thing that a lot of people get confused is that just because something may happen during the offseason, somehow they want to equate that with culture. And that is a lazy way to go about it. So when I started thinking about where we are in the offseason, what was lying ahead, both spring practice, the NFL draft, and things like that, I got to thinking, why is it that Georgia does things the way that they do things, right? And the easy and simple answer, it is the culture in Athens. That is why. The culture in Athens that Kirby Smart has put in place is the reason that they have been able to sustain the success they have had beginning in 2017. In year 2 under Kirby Smart, when they went to the national championship game, from that point forward, there has been a level at the University of Georgia of success that we just simply haven't seen prior to his arrival. And in every way possible, these literally are the golden years of Georgia football right now. And they're going to continue barring some crazy situation. Again, does that mean that, they're guaranteed to win every game? No, it doesn't. But it's just that they're going to be right there in position to do so. They're going to give themselves a chance. And I'm old enough as a Georgia Bulldog fan to know that in and of itself is saying an awful lot. Did you know that there's only one school in college football since the year 2000 that has won more college football games than the University of Georgia? That would be the Ohio State Buckeyes. Now, here is my SEC homer hat, putting it on. I appreciate Ohio State. I value them as a quality program. I understand that they just won the last national championship, but I also know that for the last 15 years, they've played in a Big Ten that was essentially a 2-team league, maybe a 3-team league in any given year. And even this year in 2024, with the super conferences and the college football playoff, it still shook out to be that it was essentially a 3-4 team league, tops. And everybody else were just also Rans. So the fact that Ohio State has 6 or 7 wins more than Georgia this century, I'm not too upset about that. So I'm very proud of where Georgia is and how consistent they've been and how over the last few years, Georgia has taken it to the next level and has started to stack championships. So anybody that thinks that any of that's really going to change at the University of Georgia over the coming years, they're deluding themselves. That's the simplest way I know to put it. Because like I said, since 2020, the recruiting rankings tell us that Georgia is among the most talented teams in college football. Number 1, number 5, number 3, number 2, number 1, number 2. These are the final recruiting rankings for these Georgia Bulldogs. And even if they lose a player or two here or there, they are still extremely talented. And when you take a coach and a coaching staff like we have at the University of Georgia, you have to believe that all those things are going to come together along with this culture that I've been talking about and put them in a position to then go and continue to be successful. So yeah, that's why I decided to talk on culture tonight. I hope that it all came out in a way that made sense. I was trying to get it there for you. I hope I didn't lose you somewhere along the way. So let's see what's happening in the chat over here. Colby could be on his way back, according to Carol. Well, Carol, admittedly, I haven't seen any news if anything happened today. I know that he had some stuff. He had a court date a little while ago, and they postponed everything and said he was going to have another court date in spring here somewhere. But yeah, if he's cleared and they think that he could be, then if that's the case, then I would assume he would be available to play. And I certainly would hope that he would be available to play, because if you've done nothing wrong, like, if there's nothing that violates the rules or any of that stuff, and yes, I know I'm painting with a broad brush here, but Kirby won't play him if he can't. That's just the way it is. If he can, he will. So if he takes care of all of his stuff and he comes back, then yeah, you really do look at that Georgia wide receiver room here in 2025 and you start to think that's pretty good. And it doesn't even we don't even have to know exactly who the quarterback's going to be. We could still look at that room and say, yeah, that's a room that could make a lot of good noise for Georgia in 2025. So if Colby comes back, that'll be cool. It's the more players you can have, the better, bottom line. And that's part of what I was talking about tonight, because Kirby is going to go out and chase and recruit the best players in the country. He is going to do that. I just saw a notification prior to coming on the show, and I believe I'm right in that we were talking about a 2026 quarterback that has committed to Ohio State currently. That Georgia now has gone in, offered this young man, and is trying to get him to flip his commitment and come to Georgia. You might say, why is he doing that if Georgia is also pursuing the number one player in the class of 2026, which would be Jared Curtis, another quarterback whom the Dogs had committed for a while, a few months back? Why would he be going after this other guy? Does that mean you're not going to get Curtis? Look, I don't know as far as the ins and outs of the recruiting. But what I can tell you is that if Kirby Smart sees an opportunity to better his roster, he will every time. And it doesn't matter if we're talking about quarterback, running back, any position. That's how I know that Kirby is going to keep the Dogs right at the top. And that's why, as much as people want to poo-poo on traditional recruiting right now, the fact of the matter is, it matters. It is how you build your program. Otherwise, you end up in a situation like Michigan State or Ole Miss or something like that, where you're turning over like 40, 50 players, Colorado, these kind of schools where you're turning over that many players in the portal alone. All these schools are having turnover like that these days, but it's because, as I mentioned last week, players graduate out, juniors leave early for the NFL, things like that, right? So everything is sped up. You're playing more freshmen and sophomores right now already, but Georgia's doing it with homegrown players, not transfer mercenary type players. I prefer that method every day. I would much rather have that going on than know that Georgia was out there turning over the roster that way in the portal every year for players that are only going to be here for 1 or 2 seasons in most cases. So roster management, it is a fickle thing, and it is boom or bust in some instances. All you have to do is look at Florida State and you can see that. But that's not the way Georgia does it. That's not the way they're going to do it. And that's why when you talk about culture at the University of Georgia, you're talking about a different thing than if you're talking about it at Ole Miss or Purdue or Colorado, right? It's not the same thing. It's just a different way of going about it. So that is how that's going over there as far as Georgia. So that's why I wanted to talk about culture this week. So again, I appreciate all you guys being here with me. Yeah, Carol, Caden Prothrow, I know he's down there at Bowden. He's one of the top recruits in the country. He's a tight end, and it seems like if Georgia wants a tight end, they go get that tight end. Doesn't matter where they are. I mean, Prothrow's number, he's really, really high on the board. There's also a top flight tight end out of California that I saw that they were pursuing. So it's just one of those things, man. They are going to attempt to go find the best players. And then you have to hope you got it right in your evaluation of the person and that they want to be there for the long haul, buy in and do the work. But as I mentioned in the show, sometimes situations change. Sometimes maybe the young man decides he has a better situation somewhere else, and that's fine. That's fine. Because it's like Kirby said, and again, there are players on the team right now who have acknowledged this via those podcast interviews and things like that I mentioned during the show, that when Kirby sits you down, he's like, here's how it is. Here's what we think we're set up to do for you. Here's how we plan to utilize you. And then the young man goes, well, I think I need to go somewhere else. And Kirby's like, okay, well, best of luck to you, but I'm not sweating it because we're going to go get 3 more just like you. That's literally how he views it. So that's the cold world that today's college football is, right? The players have every right to go pursue whatever they want to pursue and chase whatever wishful dream they have, that it's going to be easier and yet you're still going to get paid more money or whatever it is. Go do that. You are free to do it. But the one thing we know about Kirby Smart in his philosophy is he's going to let you walk. He's not going to chase you out the door, and he's not going to beg you to stay, because he believes in his process of recruiting the best players, then developing them, and hopefully they stay and see it through. Because if you do, history tells you that at the University of Georgia, it's going to pay off for you in the long run. If you are that kind of player anyway, right? If you are a Jalen Carter, if you are a Malachi Starks, right? Forgive me. If you are that level of player, then it doesn't matter that you're going to go to the NFL someday, because you're going to the NFL. Why not get the best development you can get while you're in school? Because, you know, you have to be in school X number of years, 3 years removed from high school. Why not be at the place that's going to best position you to then be the most successful you can be at your next stop? And that's what Georgia and Kirby Smart are selling these young men. And time after time, we see that it's working out exactly the way they said it was going to work out. And that is why you see these young players come in as recruits. And when they ask the older players, hey man, what's it like here? Are they shooting me straight? Is this exactly how it's going to go? Then the older players can look them in the face and say, this is exactly how it goes when you come to the University of Georgia. That's just the way it is. So they know what they're getting into when they come. And it's not one of those situations where anybody is misled or misunderstands. In most cases, the players that are leaving the University of Georgia are leaving because, and this is the cold hard truth, they aren't good enough to play at Georgia. They are wonderful depth pieces, right? They are great special teams players. And if they stayed at Georgia, Georgia would be better for it, because you would have those players down your roster. But the reason they're choosing to leave is because they aren't good enough to get on the field right now. Doesn't mean they won't be, but if you're not willing to wait and work while you wait, then you're not going to see the field. That's just how it is, unless you are a Jalen Carter or one of those type players. So it's a hard pill for a young man to swallow sometimes, trying to figure it out, you know, learning the hard lessons in life, but that's just part of it. My throat is dry. Sorry. So yeah, I see Herb's jumped in here. Let's see. What did I miss? I saw him jump in here saying hello to everybody. That's cool. Yeah, I wondered why. So you're traveling. I wondered why we didn't see you in here. So there you go. It's good to see you, buddy. I'm glad you're in here. So yeah, that's another show in the books there. So anybody got any, let's see what we got here. Julian Humphrey, in his case, his feelings were being, yeah, that's true. It's very true. 225. He just said, yeah, well, I thought I was the starter. Bottom line is you have to earn it every day. And, I think Daniel Harris is a good player for Georgia. I think he could be a really good player for Georgia. But as I'm already on record as saying here since the season has ended, I would be stunned if Ellis Robinson doesn't end up winning the job opposite Dalen Everett here in 25. Now, exactly how they line up that defensive secondary is going to be something that's interesting, because you still have Janelle Aguero, who played mostly at star this last year. And we saw the huge jump that Tyke Smith took from year 1 to year 2 at that star position. So is that going to be the role that Janelle Aguero is going to take? Or is he going to move back to play safety alongside KJ Bolden, and someone else is going to move into that star? So it's going to be really interesting to see what happens right there. and how they piece that thing together, but it's going to be awesome. Good to see you, Herb. See you, buddy. Good evening. So, yep, that's my thoughts on culture at the University of Georgia under Kirby Smart. Oh, there it is. Sorry, y'all. I'm doing some housekeeping here. I'm trying to get all my ducks in a row, and I lose my train of thought sometimes, but I found it. We are back. We're good to go. So, culture at the University of Georgia. I think the culture at the University of Georgia is rock solid. I do think that Kirby's doing it exactly the way he wants to in terms of retention of players. I think there's an awful lot to be said for that. Well, it's all to be said for that. I think he's perfectly happy, let me say it that way, with how it's playing out. But if there were something that I would that would give me pause as a Bulldog fan, it would be this year in particular, and it's probably just a confluence of timing and situation. But this year, Georgia lost 2 players to the portal that they were counting on to, contribute in 25. And of course, I'm talking about Damon Wilson and Anthony Evans. So it doesn't mean, that there aren't players that can come in and play, especially at the wide receiver position. But at the edge position, the Damon Wilson departure is one that really hurts. I just think from depth, experience, playmaking ability, all of those things. So the Dogs are going to have somebody step up there. So this is a year that Georgia's not returning any seniors. It's a year that their junior class, a lot of them are leaving early for the NFL. And so you now have that gap in that junior year where Wilson would be. He would be that guy coming back to sort of hold everything down for Georgia on that defensive front. So with him leaving, it does leave a hole there. So Georgia's got to figure that out. But I think that on the whole, Kirby's still happy with how he's handling that. But retention of all of these top flight players that he brings in recruiting is the hardest part for roster management these days. And if there was any part of this equation that makes me uneasy, it's just that. Because when you fall into a gap year, the way Georgia is here in 2025, one departure, even though it's just one of a guy that you really were depending on, if he chooses to leave, then you are sort of left in the lurch. And I kind of see that happening here. But I think a lot of that's just based on the fact that we don't know what we don't know. And there actually may be players there that we have forgotten about because they were injured or they just didn't have an opportunity yet to show us what they're all about. So I believe there are players, hopefully some pleasant surprises that we just don't know yet. But in a year like this, a move like what Wilson did is one that I fear could be more impactful than it would be in a normal year, if that makes sense. So there you go, y'all. After everything else, I still wound up keeping you here almost an hour. So with all that, I'm going to check back in and check the chat here one more time. Oh yeah, you guys are discussing people leaving. Yep, gotcha. Well, that's cool. It's just the part of the new world, right? We're all getting used to it all together. So thanks everybody for being here with me. I appreciate it. You guys, I watch the community page here on YouTube. I'll be dropping some more information as stuff comes out. We'll have it there for you. I've got a couple of different video ideas right now that I'm working on. So if we're really lucky, I might be able to get one of those up tomorrow. We'll just have to see. They're not super long, but they'll be fun thoughts. So we'll just have to see. We'll have to see how it comes together. But either way, thank you guys for spending some time here with me on another Wednesday night. I always have a good time showing up and chatting football with y'all. I really do. I'm glad you choose to be here with me. Until next time, y'all take care of yourselves, your friends, your family. Take care of each other. And go Dogs!